go back. And in this exact position, what I would recommend is you play in the spirit of the dragon Sicilian. So we would play something like g6, just giving out some moves, say castles, castles, and then pawn to d6. And this is a very hard system. Hey, I hope this video finds you well. This is going to be video series, the introductory to beating 1d4. Now, this is the most important video out of the entire series, so if you're going to skip any videos in anything that you're going to be doing, don't skip this one, because this is going to give you the fundamental building blocks in not only understanding 1d4, but understanding ways that you can combat it, and that's something that you can take with you for the rest of your entire chess career, or while you're playing. You don't have to memorize any of the other stuff, or even look at any of the other videos. This is going to be the most important part. So first, we should understand why someone might want to play 1d4. And this is very important and something that oftentimes, or especially whenever you're starting out, you don't look at like why someone plays something. They play it because they want to play it. But there's normally a fundamental reasoning. So, for example, if we look at the most common move that is played in chess, it's 1e4. And this is the move that almost all of us invariably are taught to play at an early age. So why would someone change from the tried and true, the most common, most popular move to something that is good, but not the most common, the most popular move? The reason why is because they want to not run into something, and normally that something is two things. So they want to either avoid the incredibly large body of theory that is involved or associated with 1e4. And the other reason why someone may not want to play 1e4 is because a lot of the e4 openings tend to create open positions where there's a lot of tactics, and that can be intimidating for some players. Some players also are naturally better at positional chess, at working and maneuvering in a closed board. And e4, while you can have closed positions, it does have a tendency to open up and be very sharp and tactical. And knowing that, that's why a lot of people can gravitate towards 1d4. The other reason why someone may want to go towards d4 over e4 is there is a little bit less theory. And there are also more systems within the 1d4 complex. A chess system is where you will play a series of moves in almost no particular order. No matter what, you're going to get your pieces onto certain squares, you're going to castle, and then you can have a basic plan to follow, an overview, a cheat sheet almost. And it's a lot easier to go into those sorts of setups in d4 than it can be with e4. So when we're talking about combating 1d4, the number one thing that we should do is we should try to go into positions that our opponents probably do not want us to go into, and play in a style that a d4 player is trying to avoid. So we want to have an open position, and we want to have a sharp tactical position. And that's the reason why in almost all these lines I'm going to be recommending knight f6. It's, I think, very important for us to avoid playing d5 unless strictly necessary. And the reason why is because d5 locks up the center, and it makes it to where the position for both sides now is a little more stable. It's harder now to get any pawn breaks too, such as, let's give a move such as a3. The pawn break e5, the central pawn break, is now not as appealing because it's actually not clear how black will ever win this pawn back. And that would leave the other pawn break, such as pawn to c5, and it can be a little tricky here because it can be harder to win that pawn back immediately. So pawn breaks tend to be a little bit more difficult, which means that these positions tend to start to close up. This is a fine move, and technically pawn to d5 is the best move in the position, but it's not going to be the move that we're going to be playing. We're going to be playing knight f6. Now, knight f6 does a few very important things. One, it develops a piece towards the center. Two, it removes a piece away from the king side, so now we are one piece away from being able to castle. Three, we control the center. It's very important that we control the center. And the fourth thing that it does is that it is flexible. So, for example, if our opponents want to play something as knight f3, which has all the same similar benefits, the move that I would say now is we again don't want to play d5, we don't want to lock things up. We want to strike, and we want to ask our opponent questions. And that's the reason why I recommend the move pawn to c5. And this is important, that we early and often we want to ask white to make a decision. Oftentimes, for an opponent to make a blunder, they need to be put under pressure. And for your opponent to make a mistake, you need to ask them questions. You need to put them in a position for them to make a mistake. Especially the stronger that you get, you find that your opponents tend to make less mistakes unless you really force them and pressure them. And this move achieves a lot of very important things. First, we are threatening to trade off a flank pawn, which is this pawn, for a central pawn. In a very broad, very general sense, it's important to recognize that the central pawn is more valuable than the flank pawn. The other thing that we're doing is we're giving white a chance to maybe play something that he's not comfortable with, such as d takes c5. Now, don't be scared, you can always just win this pawn back at your leisure, but this would, for a d4 player, be anathema to what they really want to do, because now the position is going to open up. And you'll find that when these positions open up, they get into positions where they can't play the same sort of setups that they want to do because there's no pawn wedge on d4 anymore. It's also quite easy for black now to start to control the center. This isn't winning for black or anything like that, but what we're doing is we're taking white out of the game that he wants to play. The only time, and for this introductory course, the only time when we are going to play d5 that I can really think of off the top of my head is whenever they go knight c3, and that's because they're threatening to go e4. And the move pawn to c5 is just not all that great. I've played it before for fun, it's just not good. The best move, and really one of the few moves that give us an edge, is pawn to d5. You need to understand that when your opponent goes knight c3, he is doing one of three things. He is either, he has no idea what he's doing, and he doesn't recognize that the knight's not well placed on c3. He wants to play the Jabava London, which is one of the very few ways that a d4 player can try to play for a sharp and tactical game. Now, if we see this and we know that the Jabava London is a sharp and tactical game, what does that mean we should do? That means that we should lock up the board, we should close up the position, we should prevent these dynamics. Again, we're playing against what our opponent wants to do. When our opponent just played d4, we said, oh, he wants to play a closed positional battle. Then when he goes knight to c3, what he's saying is, never mind, I would like to play something very sharp and tactical. Therefore, we try to lock up and try to play something closed and positional. There is a body of theory here in the Jabava London. It's definitely a great opening. And I'll be going over in future videos on how to combat that and how to fight your players the way that they want to, fight against how they want to play. So the other really good thing that this does is that it can also prevent your opponent from getting setups. One of the most common setups, and one of the most popular, is this, which is the which is the London system. And the London system, some even call this exact variation without the inclusion of knight f3, the accelerated London. The London system is very popular because it's very easy. White wants to put their knight to f3, their knight to bd2, they want to go pawn to e3, bishop to e2, or d3, and castle. They also want to go pawn to c3 and create this triangular pawn wedge. what we're going to do is we're going to immediately strike, and we're going to say you don't get to play, you don't have time to do your setup. If white insists blindly on playing something that is within their setup, we can actually ask white to make a mistake. The most common move here, by the way, is knight takes d4, which loses. Knight takes d4 loses to pawn to e5. And you can see here that it's something that's not played all the time, but when you reach it, 78%. That is an incredibly high win percentage because this loses a piece for white. Now, of course, if they move the bishop, they lose the knight. So if they take, the trick is queen a5, check. And this is a good pattern to know. We're also going to go into this in greater depth and detail in the later videos, which means that white needs to know that they have to take with the queen, and then go back. And in this exact position, what I would recommend is you play in the spirit of the dragon Sicilian. And you may be like, oh, you know, I'm scared of the dragon Sicilian, or I don't want to play something like that. But this is completely different because there's no pawn to e4. We've traded c for d pawn, and it's going to be very difficult for white to actually get any coordination. They've already moved to the queen 2 times. And if they go again, it's really hard for a system player to be able to find a move like that. So we would play something like g6, just giving out some moves. Say castles, castles, and then pawn to d6. And this is a very hard system for white to play against. So the key elements here is we want to prevent them from pushing the pawn to e4, and eventually what we want to do is we want to get a central pawn break and open up the position. We can also, in this position, play for the minority attack, which is something that we will find in a lot of cases we'll be able to play, is the minority attack. We'll be going over that in greater detail too in later videos. So to really recap the fundamentals behind my approach to combating 1d4 is finding out what our opponents don't want us to do and then doing it. And a lot of times in chess, that's the best thing that we can do. So when our opponent suggests that they want to play something in a closed positional nature, we deny them. For example, in this position, again, I would recommend c5. This is the most combative way, and we're asking to open up the position. If our opponent insists on closing the position, we insist on opening the position. This is the Banco Gambit, and you'll find that this is absolutely excellent. Black scores very well in the Lichess database across all rating ranges, including very strong players. You can see that black's scoring very well, and it's because it's anathema to what white players want to play. Most of the time in this lecture, what I'm going to be having whenever we do go over such as the Banco Gambit is I'm going to give you 2 different styles, so that way this can be more tailored towards what you want to do. One of the styles could be to play something that is more drawish, more solid, and honestly just a little bit of a better move, and that is the move pawn to e6. Or we can play in the more fun and aggressive, this is how I play, and it is a little bit more risky, and that is the move pawn to g6. All of these ideas we will branch out at, but even if you don't play the moves that I recommend, as long as you look for ways to fight against the style that your opponent's wanting to play, I think that you're going to find that your games, the way that you're going to fight against d4 is going to change, and you're going to win so many more games. Again, there are many ways to fight against this, such as the Nimzo Indian, which isn't my recommendation, but it's a great opening. The Nimzo Bogo Indian, the Queen's Indian, also a fine opening, as long as you understand what white's overarching goals are, what they don't want you to do, and if you fight against that, I think that you're going to find that you're going to have great winning chances. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or if there's something in particular that you want to cover, please let me know. Thank you.